now you need to select the location. So remember I was saying that ArchGIS likes to save things in specific locations. This is where it wants to save it, in documents under ArchGIS. So if you forget to change the location, always remember that it's going to be C, users, your username, documents, ArchGIS, that's the default location that it saves it. Okay? But I suggested that we save it in the folder that we created. That way we can always find it easily. So I'm going to go to, we'll see this document and see if it's there. This is your key1 underscore WQ. So that's where we're going to save our project. And it's easy, right? The project is named the same as the folder, so it's easy to find. Now this right here, we don't need to ever create subfolders. It makes it harder to find information. So we don't really need this. Create a folder for the local project, because we already created a folder and we want it in this folder. Once you're done, click OK. If anyone needs help, just call me over and I'll come around and help. And you can follow, if you're fine with the instructions, you can just work ahead, right? Because that's the way it's structured. But if you're stuck on the organization's URL screen, click on it, and it's Seneca Technology. Yeah, Seneca Technology. There's a ribbon, a quick access to our, you can add your own shortcuts there. There's a ribbon with the different tabs, different groups. The contents pane, the catalog pane. Eventually, when we add the folder, the geodatabase, it's going to appear in here, and then you essentially drag the layers, put it on the map, and then once it's in the map and you want to make changes, it's going to appear in the contents pane. Okay, and we're going to go over that right now. The next page, again, is tabs, different types of icons. Our first major task is to make a folder connection. And to make a folder connection, if you, let me see if this works, okay, if you right click on folders, you're going to see add folder connection, right? Or if you look at the directions, if you go to insert, you can also use the add folder there. But the right click works just as well. They both do the same function. So we right click, we're going to add folder connection. Then now we have to select that, find that folder that we created that houses all our information. So again, it's under my folder, documents, GIS. Make sure you go to the specific folder that you're referring to for the project. So in this one, it's here, and it's here. Okay, only click on it once. Don't double click because it needs the upper level folder. So don't double click. If you double click, it's going to take you inside. And if you click on here, it's not going to take into account all the data in here. So it's fine to just click the upper level folder. Okay. Now, sometimes you're trying to find the information, and for some reason it's not showing up where it is. If you have the address here, so if I go back to here, and I know the folder is in here, you can always just copy this, right? And then go back, and then click here, and then paste it in here. And it'll take you to the same spot. Once you do that, click OK. And if you've done it correctly, on the right-hand side, if you click the drop-down arrow under folders, you'll see your folder. You'll see additional information in there. And then you'll see the folder for data for chapter 1, right here. And if you click the drop-down for data for chapter 1, you'll see the geodatabase. Remember, the folder was named that, .gdd. And you'll see, if you click the drop-down, you'll see all of these. These are all the different layers that are in the geodatabase. Okay, everyone good so far? That's okay. You can supposedly, so I always forget to go to slides. So this gives you an overview of what contained. These are all different features of the program that we're going to interact with. The toolbox are functions that you use on a regular basis, you can add them to the toolbox. It's there. We never really save anything to the toolbox because we just do an assignment and we move on. So we don't really use this, but it's good to know where you can save the information to the toolbox. We've seen that this is a geodatabase that contains our information. And then these are the layers that are within that geodatabase. And if you notice, they all have their own symbology. That's their default symbology. So anything, these are airports, they're points, water, polygons. You can tell quickly by looking at it what type they are, roads or lines. And again, just I think I went over this last class, just review. Points are a single object with one lat long designation. It could be an airport. It could be a building too, depending on the resolution, right? If it's a very low resolution, it could be an airport that shows just one, a building that's 1 point. Lines, such as roads, it could be highways, it could be anything that has length. And then polygons, which are two-dimensional, they can have area, so length and width. It could be lakes, it could also be a building, it could be anything that can be described by length and width, like I said. The information that's stored within ArchGIS in the vector model could be stored in a shapefile. And the shapefile is basically just a single file that stores information of a specific type, one type. Like it could be a line stored within a single shapefile. So you can have different ones that store points, lines, and polygons, but it can only hold one data type. The geodatabase, as you've seen before, is basically a folder that contains all the information, and it contains information of different types and different layers. So when you see a geodatabase, a good thing to know about ArchGIS is there's other programs that can read certain ArchGIS files. So if you can't find ArchGIS but need to change attribute information, you could actually use another program to go and look at the data and manipulate it that way. That's a little more advanced, but just because you don't have ArchGIS and if you're in a bind and you need to change information, remember that you can find something else to access the data. Now, we're going to do a couple of different things, but essentially what we're going to do is to make the map a little bit bigger, right? We're going to change the symbology. It's very simple. Like what we did before was probably a lot more complicated than what we're going to do now. We've added the database. Now we need to move the data to the map. And to do that, there's two ways you could do it. I'll show you the way that I never use first, because it's good to know. If you click on Maps, Map, and if you go to Add Data, you'll notice if you look at the directions, the Add Data looks like this, right? And this drove me crazy the first couple of times I used it. The Add Data looks like this, this is Add Data. But depending on how big you make the screen for ArcGIS, a lot of the icons are reduced. So if you go back here, and we look at it, well, the Add Data is right here. It's a small icon. It doesn't always look accurate, but it's the same thing. We've already added a geodatabase, but if there's a situation where you don't have, there's information you want to add, that's not in here, you need to add it directly, this is where you would use this. So you would click on Browse, and then you would go through the headache of trying to locate it and add it. But if you had a folder, you don't need to do that. If you had a folder, you just click on the layer, click and hold, and drag it to the map, and then let go. And it's going to drop the features on the map and zoom into where they are. Now, if you need to add multiple layers, you don't have to do it individually. Just keep your hand on Shift, and then click the down arrow or select all the ones you want to add with the mouse, and then keep your hand on Shift, click the mouse button and hold, and then drag it onto the map. And it's going to pull in all the layers at once. I'll give everyone a second. Everyone's good? The next slide is just showing us a breakdown of the contents pane. And the reason why that's important is, depending on what you want to do, everything, all the icons on here serve a different purpose. So the drawing order basically shows how everything is drawn on the map. That lets you rearrange whether you want a point on top, a polygon on the bottom. You can list it by the source, so where the information is coming from. That lets you organize things better, so you know which database it's coming from. You can list by selection. The reason why this is important is sometimes you want to select different features. You want to select a point, but you put a polygon on top. And if a polygon is, remember I said this, if a polygon is a large figure and you have a point, you can't click through. So you can actually arrange it, so if you have a point on the bottom, it'll still let you select it. And then eventually we're going to be editing, and this allows you to list by what items you want to select to edit. Right? And there's other ones too, like snapping and labeling. One important thing you're going to have to do immediately when you add layers to ArchGIS is identifying the coordinates. Because the coordinates are what help you project your information accurately. There's two different types of coordinates. There's geographic, let me see, I might be going ahead. Yeah. There's a geographic coordinate system, and then there's a projected coordinate system. Now, the difference is that geographic coordinate system is longitude and latitude. It's based on the spherical, it's based on the Earth, which is a circle, right? You're going to have to check what that one is, but there's also a projected coordinate system that takes that sphere and flattens it out so it can be visualized on a map. You don't need to worry about these two options. It's not complicated at all. I know there's a lot of coordinate systems, but the only thing you have to remember is most of the time in North America, we use either NAD 27 or NAD 83 for the GCS. For the projected coordinate system, in this class, we mostly deal with the universal transfer Mercator. And the way that these come into effect is, have you ever seen maps where North America is larger than Russia? Like it's skewed? It's because they're using a specific projection system that favors that part of the country. Right? So it shifts everything else to make those areas more accurate. But for North America, for this class, we're going to primarily use the UTM. So this next step is to investigate where we can find that information. So if we go back to the map, and we go to the contents pane, you'll notice this is the highest level right here, is the map, right? The map is going to have its own coordinate system, and then these layers might have other coordinate systems. We're going to right click, and if you ever want to investigate or learn something about a specific layer, always just right click, go to properties. If you scroll down, go to properties, and you'll see coordinate system in there. Click on coordinate system, and you'll see it tells us that this one is NAT 1983, State Plain, Ohio. There's other things that you can do in here also. So if you want to change the display units, this will be done through here, right? You click the drop down, there's going to be other ones. The reference scale. Most often we don't do any other things in here. If you want to change, if you want to look at the coordinate system for a layer, you can do the same thing. So for structures, we'll right click on it. We'll go to properties. And if you go down, you'll notice that it's under source. Actually, no, correction. It's under, this one is a little bit different.
Selection.
Yeah. I mentioned source because I have to say something about source, but it's under, maybe it's under. Oh, here. If it is under source, it's under spatial reference right here. So under source is spatial reference right here. So you can see it again. It's 1983 is the GCS, and then the GCS is NAV 1983. The reason I was saying, mentioning source in general is if you go back up to the top, this right here will be a lifesaver for you, where it says set data source. Because often you create a map and you submit it to me, or you eventually start working with it. You create a map and submit it to someone, and the link is broken. And the way you'll be able to tell that is you'll see an asterisk on the side, a yellow asterisk, saying that it can't make the data connection. At any given time, you can actually reconnect the data by clicking on set data source, and it'll bring up this, and then you would just find the file and then reconnect it. A lot of the times, if you send me something that is missing the information, I'll go and reconnect it myself. But if you are working on something and you've lost the information, just remember that you can go into properties and then set the data source, reconnect the data source yourself. Okay? So we've done that. This is just an example that when you change a projection, it changes the view of the map based on the new projection system. Now, we're going to just go through quickly how to reproject. So most layers have their default projection. To reproject, we're going to go to analysis, and I'd say 90% of what we're going to do is going to be done through this method. You're going to go to analysis, we're going to go to tools, because ArchGIS is basically a collection of extensions, so everything is done through the tools. We're going to look for the tool, so project, type in project. Now be careful when you're using the tools, because since it's a collection of extensions, you could have numerous tools that have different catalogs that they're in. These are all data management, but sometimes they're all in different catalogs and they might work slightly different. But I know that the projection tool we're going to use is in data management. So we're going to click on the first one that pops up when you search for project. We'll just, in the instructions, it says to project airports. So we're going to select airports from the drop down. So if you click the drop down arrow right here, this will show you layers that are in your current project that you can select, so airports. If it's not there, you can find it by clicking on the folder. Immediately you can see that, again, it'll show you the projection system right now. And then you have to give it a name, because this process is going to create a file immediately and add it to the map. Always try to change it, never use a default name, because to me, airports underscore project doesn't really tell me what I did. So I change it to something that I can actually remember and it makes sense. So I'm going to change it to reproject. And then we select the target coordinate system by clicking on the globe here. And then the coordinate system search pane is going to show up. This search field, I've never been able to get to work properly. If you're too specific, you won't find your target. So the best thing to do is, it says we're going to change it to what? NAD 1983 UTM. Just search for part of the projection. So I'm just going to type in UTM. Click enter. No. Type in NAD. Oh, see what I said? It doesn't really work too well. But I know that it's a projected coordinate system. I know that it's, and I click the projected coordinate system drop down. I know it's UTM, so I click the UTM. And remember this, because for the most part, all the ones we're going to use are going to be UTM. I know it's North America, and I know it's NAD 1983, just like the first NAD 1983. And then after this, it's going to show you a list of the UTM zones. And I think this one is zone 17N. So we select zone 17N. And once selected, you just click OK. We don't need to put anything in that geographic transformation. And then once that's done, we just click run. And if it runs successfully, you're going to see project complete. At any time, if you want to see the details, there's no error, so you don't really have to, but if you want to see additional information, you can hover over top or click on it, and it'll take you to the log. And if you notice on the left-hand side, it added the layer immediately to the project. So now you have the projected, and then you have the original. So you don't necessarily need to have both of those, you can just hide one. Okay, everyone's good so far? Yeah? Okay. And so, map looks totally different, it's a different location. Or if you're working on the map and you lose the view and you can't find something, at any time, if you right click and you go to zoom to layer, it'll find it for you. Yeah, so it'll find the extent of what you're trying to find, right? Or if you make a, let's say you make a selection, and you can make selections by just clicking on the map. If you make a selection, you can do the same thing. You can just right click and you can go zoom to selection. So it's all through that menu. So the next slide, I won't really go through this because it's part of the tutorial, but I'll tell you exactly what happens. Next one is changing the coordinate system for one that doesn't have a coordinate system. If we're trying to reproject, the original one needs to have a coordinate system, right? Or else you can't translate it if you don't know where you're starting from. So something like this won't work. And you can try it out for yourself by selecting the area of water and trying to reproject. You'll see unknowns. But you can't project if there's an unknown. The next one is changing the appearance of the layers. Now, here it says to go to contents pane and then feature layer. It's a lot simpler than that. All you would do is, let's say you want to change airports to something else. Just right click on airports. And if you notice that if you double click, it'll let you, if you click once, pause, and then click again, you can change the name for a layer. But we're going to right click on it, and then go to symbology. And if you go to symbology, it'll show you the symbology pane to the right. And if you notice already, it already has something selected. So you can actually change the symbology or the iconography to a single symbol where it's just everything is consistent, or you can change it to unique values like they had before. So they have unique values, and you select, when you do need unique values, you have to select a field that you want to base it on. So they select it F type. If you select F type, it'll change, and if you look at the bottom, it'll change the icon based on the value in F type. So every value is going to have different iconography. If you look at the icons along the top, there are other things that you can change, like the rotation, the transparency, the size, the drawing order. The drawing order is just basically the order in which the icons are drawn. We'll go back to single symbology. In order to change the symbology, you have to click on the actual symbol. So we don't really like this look. So if we click on it, it'll show you the catalog of the iconography you can use. And you can search for different types. Let's see if there is an airport one. If you type in airport, the icon for airport will show up. And then you would just select it, and then there, you change all the icons for the airports. One thing to remember is we're opening up all of these panes. All of them are still open. Remember, don't forget that there's a tabs on the bottom. So if you can't find something, or if you need to go back to something, if you need to go to the catalog, you can click on the catalog tab to take you back. It won't disappear unless you close it. And another thing is, if you've lost the catalog tab, which sometimes happens, if you click on view, and then if you go through here, you can actually turn on the different panes, right? If you click on catalog, it'll turn on the panes. So all of a sudden, if you've lost everything, like if your map all of a sudden looks like this, which scares people sometimes, if you go here, and you click catalog, it'll show back up. Okay? Content, it'll show back up. Everyone still good? Yeah? Okay. So we've changed the symbology, we've shown how to change the appearances. Now, the next part is just being able to save the project. This can be frustrating because everyone just goes to project and save. You've already saved it, but if you're trying to share with someone, that won't work. Because when you're saving the project, you're saving it with the links to the data that's on your computer. There's the folders that are on your computer that are going to be different from my computer, right? So in order to send it to me, you basically have to combine all that information into one package and send that to me. So to do that, you would go to share, you go to project, and here you would click save package to file. And remember what I said about ArchGIS likes to save things in different places. If you're fine with where it saves it and you know, great. But if you're working on your exercises, I just recommend you just save it to where you created your folder. Because that gives the added benefit of if you saved it to your documents, so Wilson documents. If you saved it to the folder that you created, then you know everything is in the right place, and you know that it's being backed up online, so you won't lose the information.
So do we save as or just save project? Or
Save package to file. But where are you though? Okay, let me go back a little bit. I think when you ask me save as, that makes me worried a bit. Because you're going to share. You're going to click on project. This save as is different. Save project, this is different. This is it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Project. Here we save package to file. If you click on this first one, it won't let you do it because you're not sharing online. You have to click on save package to file.
I don't even see the project on my read or something.
Oh, really? For me, it's going to be documents. Click one. I'll save it in leave one. And then just give it a name. And again, I'll name it TD1 underscore WQ. And then save. Now, whenever there's the option to analyze, I recommend you analyze because that'll save you a lot of headaches. Down here, it gives you the option valid items only or all items. Where this comes in handy is if it's a large database that has information that you're not using, it's not going to include it. It'll only include what you need. Okay, so valid items is fine. If you're having issues with the save, then you can try all items. Click analyze. It'll tell you if there's errors. I don't see any errors. And then click package. It'll ask you, now whenever you see this message, don't just click no. Because sometimes especially when you're editing, you forget that you didn't save something. So when it asks you this question, make sure that you're positive you don't want to lose any save changes. If you're not sure, I would click yes, just to save it. Because it's not saving, this is not saving the compressed file, it's not asking you to save the compressed, it's asking you to save the original project to the original project file. So I'll click yes. And then if all's good, it'll finish. If you're working on the Seneca computers, sometimes it'll give you a headache. But we'll figure it out when you guys run into those issues. There's lots of workarounds. So once it's done, you're going to see the successfully created confirmation. If you click on Manage Project, it'll take you to where it is. So it's right here. Now, let me point out one important thing. this project file, that's fine. If you send me this file alone, I can open it and I'll see it. That's the difference between this and all this. So all this information is basically stored in this. Okay, so some students end up sending me all this. Please don't, unless you have a lot of issues, then I'll say, okay, upload your entire workspace, right? But if you're not having issues, I really love when you send me just that one file. Okay? Yeah, the PBKX. Yeah.
This one and the other one is different, right?
Yeah, this is the APRX is actually the template for the project. So this, you can open this up, but this will need everything in this folder in order to work properly. Yeah, you can't, if you send me this, I won't be able to use it. Yeah, so it's a PBKX, that's the important part. Everyone still good? Saving or sharing maps. So, in some cases, you might just want to share the actual map. To do that, it's done through the same menu. So you can go share. This won't work with this project, so don't do this first part. But the second part, the PDF will work. So if you're about to share just a map, you click share and click map. It's done the same way. So you just click save to package, and then you would just give it a name and then analyze the package. Now, the difference, you're probably wondering the difference between project and map. The project is going to send people everything, so they'll be able to navigate layers, see the data, do all that stuff. The map is just going to send just an interactive map if you share it this way, right? So they can see the map, move around, they won't be able to see the data, they'll only be able to see what you show them in the map, right? But if you want to share just a PDF of the map, if you go here and you click output, you go to export, and these are the different types that you can save it as. We'll click flatten PDF. Does everyone understand the difference between flatten PDF and vector PDF? Flatten PDF is more secure. So if you, a lot of times when I get PDFs and I want to make a change to it, if you open up Adobe and it's vector, you can go in there and change the text, change images, change everything. If you don't want anyone to have that ability, you would create a flattened one, and it basically is a PNG, it's an image. Like if you open it up in Adobe, you won't be able to access the text or do anything. There's no ways you can mess it up. It takes a lot more effort, right? So in this class, you can use either one, it doesn't make a difference. So we'll go flatten PDF, file type, and if you notice there's images in here, right? Because you're saving it as an image, so you can even save it as a BMP. Again, change location if you want, change the image size, if you want to see it, preview. All these settings you can modify. And then once you're done, click export. You can see in the folder, so if you can't locate it, if you click here, it'll take you to the folder. And then there's a file. There's the export of the display right here. Mine was at the grayscale in the settings, so I can do it again here, 24-bit color. Remember to change the name. If you already have a file open, it's going to lock it. So either change the name or close the file. So I just add 1 to this. Export. Show again. So we've exported an image. Okay? So that's basically it for the demo today. Let me just double check. If I ended too early. But I think I covered everything in there. Yeah, so that's it. That's basically it for the demo. Right? So that's correct. The join field, we click the drop down, and it's county FP. We know it's county. We know that it's county. That's a join field. Here it says keep all input records. Yes, we want to see all the data from old tables. That's fine. Index adjoined. What index means is that if there is a huge table that has 1 million records, it assigns a unique identifier to each record, and that speeds up the analysis, right? It speeds up the join. But we don't need, it's not a big table. Join operation, we just leave it blank because we don't really care. It's 1-to-1. And then we click validate join. It'll show us the screen. You scroll down and say succeeded. That's good. Close. Then just click OK. Now, if you click OK, you might not see anything, but remember, the join is just connecting the two tables, so it's not going to show you anything right away. But if you have the Census Counties Ohio open, scroll all the way across, and you'll notice, if you didn't notice before, you'll notice now that there's additional columns, right? And these columns are actually from this table. So if you right click this table and you open it, you'll notice that all these columns have been added to the Census Counties Ohio table. So really what you've done is you've taken just a regular attribute table with no spatial information, and you've connected it to spatial data. So now this information can be referenced using the map. Okay? Makes sense? Did everyone get it to show up like that? Yeah? Okay. So now, look at the steps. Right click attribute table, we've done that. We've observed that the attribute table contains information from both input tables. Click on the map. Now we're going to create a simple query. Okay? So to create a simple query, we're going to click on map. We're going to, actually, before I go that, I overlooked, I'm just going to want to mention relates. So to do a relate, remember to do a join adds both data from both tables and makes it into one huge table. A relate is basically a relation, there's no information moving around. But to do that, it's the same process. You click here, because here it says joins and relates, right? So instead of adding join, you would go to add relate, and it's the same process. It's very similar, okay? So we won't review that. Because most of the time, I prefer to use a join, because a join you can save it and it's permanent, okay? So the next step is to create a query. To do a query, click on map, go to select by attributes. It's going to show you the input row, Census Counties, Ohio, that's fine. We have to select the selection type. In most cases, it's going to be new selection, right? The reason why there's these options is if you've done a previous selection and you want to just modify it, then you can change it. But it's a fresh selection, so we'll just leave a new selection. Here, this is where you select the criteria for the query. If you notice here, there is a SQL button. This comes in handy if you do a lot of repetitive tasks, because it's a lot easier to modify. And what I used to do is, here, I will go ahead and I'll show you the way to use it. So if you know SQL, great. If not, you can still use it. So we have to select the where clause. We'll click the drop down. And remember, we're doing the steps here, even though I've done it ahead. We're doing the steps in here, okay? We're on slide 19. So now we're going to set up the select by attributes pane to look like this. So if you want to go ahead, you can try it. So it's where population. So we'll go down to population is greater than. That's supposed to be is greater than. Is greater than, yeah. I think from what I remember, it's greater than, but you'll get. I'll mark it right on the exercise if you use that one. Okay. And then we select. We type in 127,500. Now, the way that SQL comes in handy is, let's say you have to do this and there's a lot of different modifiers, like you have to use 10 modifiers. If you click SQL, what I used to do is I would create it for one and I would just copy it and then quickly change the numbers instead of manually going through and moving, right? Because it's easier to do a Control F in Word. I would copy it to Word, hit a Control F, find everything, change it, and then copy and paste it back in, right? Because I didn't know SQL. So it makes things a little bit quicker. If you know SQL, a lot of times it's easier to just type it in using SQL. If you don't know SQL and you're fine learning programming languages, I highly recommend getting SQL. Because if you're trying to get a job in ArcGIS, and there's someone that just knows ArcGIS and someone that knows ArcGIS and SQL, you are going to get the job, I'd say 100% of the time over that other person. Right? Because SQL is more handy when it comes to data analytics and visualization. So they like, and database management, so they like when someone knows SQL. Okay, and it's not hard to learn. It's very easy to learn. So we click apply. It's going to, if you look in the background, once you click apply, it's already done the selection. And it's good to just quickly look at the background, because if you notice that the wrong item is selected, you can change it and then hit apply again, and it'll revise the selection. So once you're done, you click OK. And if you have Census Counties Ohio open, you can see that it's selected the records that met that criteria. Okay? Now, once it's selected, there's other options you can do. If you look at the different options there, you can copy it. You can, if you click on the header, you can sort the data too, sort ascending. Now, you notice that the selection is also on the map. Those are all the same records that are selected in the table. Now, a lot of the times when you're making selections and the data is large, it's very hard to see what you selected. So a good tip is, on the left-hand side where it says Census County, Ohio, if you right-click on it and go to selection, there's other options you can do with the selection. So you can actually make a layer from only the objects that were selected. So if you go to make layer from selection, right here, you'll see on the left-hand side there's a new layer. It's called Census Counties Ohio Selection. If you hide the original layer, you'll notice that you only see what's selected. Okay? So what you've done essentially is you've created a temporary, it's only temporary, layer from what was selected in the bottom one. Okay? It's a good way to simplify the display and make things easier to understand. Okay? Everyone is good till now? Oh, nice. Well, everyone said yes. That's impressive. So now we're going to make it a little bit more complicated, but it's still the same process. So on slide 20, we're going to create a compound query. And to do that, it's basically the same process. You go to the layer. Be careful. Don't go to this selection layer, because it's only the layers that are selected. We go back to the Census Counties, Ohio. Or actually, you know what? See this layer right here? On a tip on the exercise. If you're adding in queries on top of queries, so if you notice here, our first query said population is greater than 127,500. This one says add housing is greater, and housing is greater than 100,000. So this is a subset of this. We've already done this, and I've already saved this table. So you could apply this to the original data set, or you could apply this to your selection you've already made, because they're similar, right? It's not going to mess it up. So realistically, on here, whether or not you apply to this one or this one, you should get the same answer. Okay? So I'll apply to this just so you can see. So I'll go, and if you apply to this, you're gonna have to start the query from scratch. But if you apply to this, it'll save your original query. So we'll click on this, we'll go to map, select by attributes, and you'll notice it's already in there. And the way we want to change it is we want to add and housing is greater than 100,000. So click on add clause. By default it'll say and. If you click the drop down, you'll notice you can change it to and or. We select the field. Thank you. Housing greater than 100,000. And then again we click apply. And if you notice, the selection should change a bit more. And if you go down, you can double check, it all makes sense. You click
okay? And there's your new selection. And again, you can go through the same process, you can go right click, go to selection, make layer from selected. And then we can compare the two. So if we look at these two, let's see how they differ, see? So that's where the selection changed, okay? So now you've essentially just created a compound query. Now, the next step is to add even more selections to that query. And if you haven't looked at the exercise already, slide 21 is one of the things you're gonna have to do in the exercise. So that's why I recommend saving your workspace. Okay, so for this one, it says, again, we're going to apply to Census Counties, Ohio. So click on the layer. And remember, to run the query, it's not right click. To run the query, you have to go to map and select by attributes. New selection. If you don't select new selection, it's going to be based on the old selection. So always leave it as new selection. We're going to delete the previous ones. We're going to, or change it. We're going to add, and it says name is, for the first one is Columbiana. So we go name, select name, is equal to. Now, you could go and type in the entire name, but there's actually a shortcut for entering the variables in. So if you click the drop down, it'll actually show you all of the variables that are currently stored in the field. So you don't have to type. And if you start typing the first one, Columbiana, it'll fill it in for you. So we'll go ahead and add 4 other more. If you look at the slide, it says it wants the Boolean to be OR, so make sure you change it to OR. If you don't change it to OR, you're not going to get any selected records because there can't be a field that has all these values in it. There isn't a field. So now we go and we select all these. So in this case, it's name for all of them. Double check is equal to, yes. And then the next one is Mahoney. And then after that, it's start, thank you. Yeah, it's equal to, yeah. Portage. And then Trumbull. Okay, once you're done, click apply, and there to make the selection. And if you notice, it should all be the 5 in the northeast corner. And for this one specifically, if you haven't saved this one, or if you haven't created a layer, I recommend right clicking and make a layer from this. And once you've made that layer, I would rename that layer. To rename that layer, click on it once, and then click a single click again, and it'll give you the highlight. And I would rename it to maybe _5 counties. Just so you remember what it is. Let's start. This is as complicated as it gets for creating compound queries. The next one is exporting the results. This is to a database. This is important because when we're doing joins and we're running queries, anything that's immediately put here or is shown here and we move it here, it's a temporary result. To make sure that it's permanent, you need to export it. And what exporting does is it places it in the actual database. Because if you notice right now, only the ones that we added to the map are in the database, right? So if we close this down, they're going to disappear. If we save it and close it down, what's going to happen is every time we load the program and we open our workspace, it's going to try to run and do these selections for you every single time. That drives me crazy because when I used to work in the field, someone would do a query and it would contain tons of data, they would send it to me and I would open it up and I'd have to sit there for 10 minutes while it was calculating this, right? It's not efficient. If you have a table here that you want to keep and you want to make it faster, you export it and it puts it in the database. You've seen how quickly we added the data, right? It takes a second. So once it's added here, you just drag and drop, right? And it's fast. So to get it exported into your database, what we do is, if you look at the steps, again, it says, I went too far. Right click on the contents pane and select data and export features. So for the 5 counties, we'll try for the 5 counties, right click because we want to save that. Go down to data, you'll see data, export features. And the best thing about exporting like this is it'll export to your database, right? So right now, this module 2 is not technically your database, it's data that you've imported. Your database is actually right here. This is the one the project created. So it's gonna place it right here for you. So we'll give it and actually you've already renamed it, so you don't need to change the name. But if you need to change the name, you can also do it there. It'll tell you where it's being saved. You can just double check. You see ex1_WQ, that's GDB, that's your database. You click OK. When it's done, look, it pops up right here. So now it's within your database. And if you save the project, it's always going to be there. Now, if there's something that's not in your database, for instance, let's say there's this, and it's stored in a different location, and you want to store it within your database to make it safe, so when you send it to someone, it's always there. You can actually pull layers between databases. So if I pull it here, it'll move it here. So I've actually made a copy into my database, okay? Good? Okay. Yes? Which, give it a name if you have to. And then once that's done, click OK. And if you notice here, it'll create the export features. This is the exported feature. You no longer need this, so you can remove this, right? Because you made a copy and you exported it. Okay? So that's it for exporting features. And actually, and a shortcut is, if you go back here, let's say we go back to here, if you still have your selection, you can actually export this selection directly. So if we go here, and we go to data, and we go to export features, you'll notice, if you notice here, you can export the selections directly by clicking this. If you turn it off, it's going to export everything. If you turn it on, only the features that are selected are being exported. So that's just a shortcut to export selections. Oh yeah. So you see, in this case, this one right here, I exported the selection that I made into a new layer. But let's say I created a selection. It's still in the main table. If you right click and you go to data and you get it, export features, you'll get this option right here to only export what's been selected. Okay? No problem. So now the next one is labeling. To label, we have to click on the labeling tab at the top. We select the fields that we want to use to label, the field that we want to use to label, and that's by clicking this drop down. If we select name, just click on name. And all you have to do once you do that, you can change the fonts and everything else up here. We can just click label. And in this case, it's labeling way too much. I'll turn off the label. We're going to apply it to colleges, because that makes more sense. So I'll select colleges, click label. There's a name for the college's label. Okay, and if you look over here, you can also change where you want the label to be dropped. Good? Okay. Now This one here is a little bit trickier than the labeling. It's configuring pop-ups.
How do we get rid of the labels?
If you don't want it, you just click the button again. It's gonna be that. Okay, so now we're going to, and this is last step, we're going to configure the pop-ups. To show the configure pop-up screen, we right click, then we go to the configure pop-ups is right here, configure pop-ups. It's going to show this right here. Don't do anything yet, I just want to show you the purpose of this. So once we turn on the attachment, this is where we would give we would add the option to show the image. Because if you notice, if you haven't noticed already, if you click on one of the objects, this is the pop-up. It pops up, shows you information. But there are the fields, but there's no image at the bottom yet, right? So we're going to turn on the extension, and then we're going to add that at the bottom. And an important thing to remember is that this, when we turn it on here, this applies to the whole layer. So we're turning it on for the whole layer, so that all the features can get the option to show pop-ups. And that's this slide right here. To actually turn on the extension, we have to enable it first. That's what's on here. And to enable it, we're going to go to the analysis pane. We're going to use tools. So to enable it, you're going to click on analysis, go to tools, and I know that the name is called enable pop-up. So I'm going to search for enable attachment. Enable attachments is the name. Once it's there, click on it. It's going to ask you for the data set. So essentially what you're doing is you're taking a data set and it's going to turn on that feature to enable attachments for that data set only. So if we do it for colleges, it'll let us attach an image to colleges. But if you want to attach it to Census Counties, Ohio, you're going to have to go through the exercise and turn it on again, okay? What we're going to do for colleges, we click run. It's going to run, hopefully no errors. And once it's done, if you don't need this anymore, we'll close it. Now it's turned on. And if you notice, there's this right here. Now, in order for us to show the image specifically, this just tells it that we can attach things now. But to add images, we have to turn on images up here. So if you click on images, it's going to drop the image attachment down here. Now we're ready to actually add an attachment. But to do that, we need to select one object to add the attachment to. If we refer to our steps, we kind of skipped ahead. We've enabled the attachments. We've turned it on right here. Now we're going to attach it to one college, and it says to attach it to Youngstown State University. To do that, we have to find that object. And remember, if you're searching for something, what's the best way to do it? Probably to go to select by attributes, right? You can try clicking on the map. Sometimes that works, sometimes it's frustrating. But if you go to select by attributes, it's a lot easier. So click on select by attributes, new selection. We click, we're looking for name is equal to Young. We'll look for Young and see if it can find Youngstown State. There, I found it, Youngstown State. Click on it, click apply, I found it, click OK. Now that it's selected, we need to bring out, you see this configure pop-ups? Remember, this is for the entire layer, so this is kind of useless for us now. So we can get rid of it. To actually attach it to that Youngstown State, we need to bring up the attribute table that shows us the colleges. And this one, I always forget where it is. You'll probably forget too. Remember, it's this one right here. This attribute link right here. It's always minimized. So click on attributes. It'll bring up the attributes for the selected item. It'll show you if it's been selected. If it hasn't been selected, you can go here and select yourself. And the attachments extension is open. It's right here. It's available. If you don't if you go through this exercise, because this isn't the exercise, if you go through it, you go through the steps, and you don't see this attachment, it's because you haven't turned it on using the tools, okay? So troubleshoot, you go back and turn it on. So now, we click on attachments, we click add, and then the images that you're going to attach are part of the module data. So we're gonna have to find that image. So if you go to module 2, and you go into the folder, you'll see there's YSU. That's the image we're going to attach.
Sorry, how did you do this? Please do it
Which step did you?
again. The last one.
Okay,
From the creator.
so from here or from the selection?
Yeah, well.
So selection?
From here.
Oh, someone else is saying from the selection. I'll go back to the selection. So the selection is, we use select by attributes for the selection, right? We go here, name is equal to Youngstown. Youngstown, we find it, we click OK. To show this attributes pane, remember it's the one that's always hard to find, it's kind of hidden. It's right here. This one right here. Click here. And this is the attributes pane for the individual element. And then when you go here, it's going to look like this. Make sure the right one is selected. Go to attachments. Click add. Navigate to your image, which is YSU. And you're going to have to do this for these other two. So make sure you save the workspace and go through this. Once I'm done this, if you have a few minutes, I would just go and find these two and just attach it. There, you've already got the marks for this, okay? Click on it, click open, and you're going to see it right here. Now, once it's added, you need to check if it actually appears on the map. I would zoom into where Youngstown State is. Make sure, and I forget to do this all the time, make sure you click on Explore selected, and then now click on that highlighted Youngstown State marker. And you'll see the pop-up, and if you drag all the way down, you should see the image right here. So you geotag the image. Yeah? Okay. So that's it. Yes. Remember, when you're saving here, when you're saving a project, save project as, you're saving this APRX. This APRX needs all these folders and the associated data. I'm not asking for that. And if there's an issue, I'll ask you for the APRX. But for the exercise, if you look at the exercise, it's saying PPKX. To do that, you need to go to Share, Project, Save Package As, and if you notice, it'll let you save it at PPKX. That's how you do it. Okay? And I'll do it to show you what it looks like. So I'll name it temp. I'll put it on my desktop. Let me see. Temp. You analyze your package, and then package, it'll save. You want to say you want to save, ask you if you want to save, say yes, it will save. And all that package is it's a convenient file, nice convenient file. Oh, it's still working.
So it's a folder with everything there.
Oh, don't open it yet. It's supposed to be, it's a compressed folder. So I opened it too early. If you go back, see, look, yeah, right there.
Okay, sir, what's the name of the other schools we have to do, or the other places?
Oh, I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember. The acronym is, it's easy to find.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's not one of those things where the acronym is like, what the hell it is. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's only 3. Sorry? Okay, so to save, you go here, Share, Project, and then here, Save As, and then give it a name. Pick a location and give it a name. And then to save as a map file. Remember, to save as a map, you go Share, Save As, Map File, right there. That's the other option. That's the MPAX file,
What should we name
MAPX.
it as?
Sorry?
What should we name it as?
Name it as an exercise one, the same thing as your file, EX one underscore your.
Okay.